It's December the 24th as I speak these words, well, in the UK anyway, so season's greetings everyone, Merry Christmas. It's been a busy time, but a great year for my YouTube channel, and I thank you all so much for your support and your love and your comments and your interaction over 2024. One of my favourite things about my work is that I get to interact with people from all over the world. This is my yearly Christmas video, and full disclosure, it's going to be full of stuff about faith and God and Christmas, so if that's not your cup of tea, then I won't be offended if you want to move along. I'll be back in a few days with my scheduled programming, a whole ton of new camera and lens reviews in no time at all. But I've loved writing and putting this video together because it's given me an excuse to go through my backup hard drives and find all kinds of Christmas images I've taken over the years from all over the UK and even some from South Korea. In fact, it was the amazing shop lights in the streets late at night in Korea that got me into photography in the first place. And one of my favourite things is to test camera lenses at Christmas time. Like a child who's just got their first large sensor camera and discovered photography, I'm obsessed with bokeh, or bokeh, as posh people like to call it. And yes, I know that's actually the proper way to pronounce it. Even various Japanese lens designers I've met over the years have told me that. And because Christmas lights are shining in the darkness all over the world, this is pretty much the best time of year to capture some bokeh-tastic images. In fact, I've been feeling really antsy for the past couple of days as I've just finished a whole load of reviews and I don't have any new lenses right now that I need Christmassy sample pictures for, which is a little bit sad. I need to grow up and just take some pictures for their own sake, don't I? Well, ever since I was a little boy, it was Christmas lights shining in the darkness that enthralled me and filled me with a sense of awe at what's otherwise the darkest time of the year. I have such powerful memories of decorations lighting up Christmas markets in the dark evenings back in my family's villages in the English countryside, shining Christmas trees and Advent candles too. In fact, here's our pretty depleted family candle, which my 5-year-old daughter's been lighting up and blowing out every dinner time this whole month. Light seemed to be woven into every part of the story of Christmas itself as well. Even when I was an atheist for the first 21 years of my life, I was fascinated by the mysterious Bible readings and carol services and nativity plays at Christmas time, especially what appeared to be accurate prophecies in the Old Testament about who Jesus Christ would be and when he would come, that God's Messiah would be born of a virgin in Isaiah chapter 7, that he'd be born in Bethlehem in Micah chapter 5, that Jesus would come and be killed after the post-exilic rebuilding of Jerusalem, but before its destruction by the Romans in Daniel chapter 9, and a handful of other amazing predictions about his death on a cross in Isaiah chapter 53, among many others. It was only later in my life that I discovered that most of them were written 600 years before the historical person of Jesus was even born, which completely bowled me over. And I think the most beautiful prophecy of all was written by Isaiah, again, hundreds of years before Jesus was born. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. For to us a child is born, to us a child is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. The people walking in the darkness. Do you sometimes feel like this world is a bit dark? Or even like you might be walking in darkness? And what does that even mean? Well, I've come to understand those words now. When I look back on it, my life before becoming a Christian at the age of 21 was actually pretty dark. I wasn't a serial killer or child molester or drug addict or dog kidnapper or even worse, somebody who shot with a Samsung camera, but I always had a sense that life wasn't quite what it should be. And as a pretty strong atheist, the more I thought about it, the more breathtakingly absurd and depressingly pointless life seemed to be. If there really wasn't a God out there for us, the more dark life seemed. Without God, and whether we like it or not, life ultimately has no meaning. It has no purpose and no value. No meaning, no purpose, no value. We would simply be highly evolved animals whose existence was a mysterious cosmic accident floating pointlessly in a vast, cold, indifferent universe, doomed to ultimate darkness and lifelessness. For example, in order for life to have meaning, there needs to be something that comes after death. As the apologist William Lane Craig puts it, if each individual person passes out of existence when he dies, then what ultimate meaning can be given to his life? Does it really matter in the end whether he existed at all, ultimately, if everything in the world, including ourselves, are simply doomed to destruction and to non-existence? And even if someone could formulate a magic potion that allows us to live forever, well, life would still ultimately be meaningless. We could still ask of life, so what? Some people try to find meaning in appreciating beautiful artwork, or listening to thoughtful music, or reading poetry, or imaginative novels, or even immersive computer games. But something C.S. Lewis, the philosopher and Christian apologist who also happened to write the Chronicles of Narnia series, pointed out, was that we never enjoy the beauty to be found in those things in and of themselves. Rather, we are excited and enthralled by them because they are pointing us to something else, a deeper meaning in life, and one that can only really be there if our lives are more than just some temporary cosmic accident. Some people find meaning in charitable giving or building a big inheritance for their children, which isn't a bad place to start either. But who's to say that something won't happen to our finances? Some new government comes along that increases inheritance tax even more and takes it all away, like we're seeing here in the UK. Care home fees might eat it all up in your old age. Your children might squander what you've given them. Or they themselves might come to see that even if you've left them a nest egg, their own lives ultimately still lack meaning, no matter how much money you've left them or how much worldly wisdom you've managed to pass on. Without the existence of a benevolent God, and without an eternity with Him, life is ultimately without meaning. And in order for life to have ultimate purpose, well, we need to know that there's not only a God out there, but a God who gives us important things to do, some reason to actually exist in the first place, some mission. But no, for the same reasons that there can be no meaning to life without God, there's no real purpose to it either, because we're clutching at straws to figure out what we're striving towards in the first place. And what about value? Do our lives really have value? Without the existence of God, then there is no such thing even as objective values, good or bad, beautiful or dreadful, right or wrong. Because where could objective values even come from in the first place? Who's to say that it's truly wrong to lie, to cheat, to steal, to rape, or even to murder? Who's to judge? Without God, human beings ultimately can only describe what exists in the world, what is, rather than what ought to be. This was talked about by the famous Scottish philosopher David Hume. It's known as the is-ought problem, and it's also known as the fact-value distinction. Where on earth can values, even judgments about what is good and beautiful, possibly come from, if we are simply highly evolved, soulless animals, and the thoughts in our heads nothing but brain chemistry or electrical impulses? If all we have are the observable facts of the world around us, but no greater meaning to tie them all together? If right and wrong are merely cultural values of the moment, then why can we say it was right for us to prosecute Nazi war criminals in the Nuremberg trials after the Second World War for the terrible, horrifying atrocities that they committed? Surely that would just be an imposition of our cultural values onto those of the Nazi Party of its time. In order for life to have value, there needs to be a value giver. Someone who's given us a supernatural conscience, because there's simply no other way that the governing consciences that obviously do exist in our minds could possibly have come about. Science has no real answers for that, which actually work when you break them down. As a 20-year-old man, I started to really realize and understand that without God, there really is no meaning, purpose, or value to life. There's no real light. Now, I responded to this depressing idea by trying to make up meaning and moral rules for myself and for the people around me about how to live, something many others in the world had tried to do over the course of time. But not only did I find that most of the moral rules I came up with didn't really work all that well, and the ones that did work just happened to be straight out of what I'd heard in the Bible anyway, but I couldn't even keep to my own rules. I kept breaking them all the time. So I wondered if perhaps popular atheist philosophers might be able to help me and give me some guidance, some hope, some meaning, some purpose, some value. But no, even the best ones all agreed with me that without God, life is essentially and ultimately depressingly meaningless. Bertrand Russell concluded that we have no choice but to build our lives upon the firm foundation of unyielding despair. Nietzsche predicted that modern man would realize that atheism led to nothing but nihilism, the destruction of all meaning and value in life. And that's what he was trying to say when he wrote that God is dead and we have killed him. Are we not straying as through an infinite nothing? Do we not feel the breath of empty space? Jean-Paul Sartre wrote of the nausea of existence, and Albert Camus concluded that life without God was utterly absurd and meaningless. So, it's safe to say that my atheism wasn't exactly very encouraging, so I settled for a temporary solution. Just watch TV, play computer games, surf the internet, and surround myself in entertainment. Plenty of entertainment out there, right? Isn't there? To push back any thoughts we might have about the bigger questions of life, to try and stop them from bothering us, to try and fight off the silence and the darkness. But even that didn't make me feel any better because, like everyone else, I still had to turn the TV off in order to go to sleep at night, and in the silence of my bedroom, the meaninglessness crept in again and again. All sounds a bit dark, right? At least all those atheist philosophers had the courage to admit where their beliefs were ultimately taking them. But this Christmas Eve, I've got some good news. At Christmas time, we celebrate that 2,000 years ago, light came into the world once and for all. The hope, meaning, purpose and value that we're all looking for is here, and here to stay. The reason why Christmas has come to be celebrated so unstoppably all over the world is that Jesus Christ is the most visible arrival of God's meaning, purpose and value for you, no matter who you are, what you've done, or what you might be going through. The world doesn't have to be dark or hopeless anymore. If God is with us, then you matter. And that is one of the many names of Jesus Christ. In fact, it's the first name he was ever given by Isaiah before he even came into this world. Emmanuel, God with us. We can know that God is real from seeing the world around us and taking into consideration its very existence, not just its impossible complexity, but just from seeing that something rather than nothing exists here at all. The time, space and matter all around us could only have been created by something or someone outside of time, space and matter, and someone with a personality in order to have the will to create it all in the first place, and intelligence. We also know that God is real from our conscience, from seeing that there is an objective right and wrong, an objective good and bad, the same for everyone. And finally, we know it from revelation. We know it because God has directly spoken to people throughout history again and again to reveal himself, to give them value, meaning, and purpose. Back when I was at school, I was taught that God was perhaps a bit like a giant elephant, and that all the world's religions were like blind men trying to figure out what he was. One held his tail and thought it was a rope. One held his leg and thought it was a tree. One held its ear and thought it was a fan, and so on, and no one was able to figure out what on earth it could be. But at Christmas time, we can celebrate that this elephant can talk. The God of this world who made us and loves us can talk. He showed us himself in the character, teachings, and the heart of Jesus Christ. We don't have to feel around blindly to guess at who he is. We can read and listen and discover from what he has shown us, because that's what a loving God, like a good father, wants his children to be able to do. And that's the light which Isaiah was predicting all along. In the beginning of the Gospel of John, we read, "The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God." That light is meaning, purpose, and value for each of us. The meaning of life is not just to discover that there's a God out there and how to be forgiven by him and how to make your peace with him through the death of Jesus Christ on a cross, but also to discover how to have an exciting relationship with him that can fill you with the kind of deep-seated joy that we all need, we're all looking for. The joy that can carry us through bad times that life inevitably throws at us. And the purpose of life is, inspired by his amazing love and mercy and grace for you, to thankfully pass that on to those around you, developing a deep forgiveness, love and service for others in the world around us. That's God's way for us to play our own part in turning the often backwards values and systems of this dark world back the right way up. And because God has shown the world that he is here and that he loves us through the coming of Jesus Christ, well, that shows that you have real value. Why else would he make you? Why else would he send his son into the world? Why else would Jesus offer to forgive anyone who sincerely comes to him of even the worst things you and I might ever have done, to give us a clean slate and a fresh start? No matter how down or lonely or hopeless or empty you might feel at any time, you too can find real hope, meaning, value, and purpose through the God who loves you and has shown himself to you at Christmas time. If, like anyone else in their right mind, you have questions about how and why you might be able to believe in God in the first place, then a bit later this year I'll be starting a second separate YouTube channel all about that, looking into tough questions about the Christian faith is a big passion of mine. Merry Christmas everyone, and have a fantastic 2025.